human scientist, broke the galaxy's most sacred rule. He touched the wildlife, and by doing that, he accidentally created the most powerful civilization the universe had ever seen. This isn't fiction. This is the story of Dr. James Chen, a xenobiologist who thought he was helping an injured creature. What happened next shattered every rule in the Galactic Council's handbook, because that one touch didn't just save a life. It sparked an evolution that would reshape the political map of known space. But the truth behind this will shock you. See, the Galactic Council had one unbreakable law for undeveloped worlds. Don't interfere, don't make contact, and definitely don't touch the wildlife. They had this rule for a reason. 53 civilizations had been destroyed because someone thought they knew better. The Council believed humans were too emotional, too reckless to follow this rule. They were right about the reckless part. Dr. Chen was alone on survey station Kepler 442b when it happened. His mission was simple: watch, record, leave no trace. The planet below was home to the Krill, a species of small furry creatures with 6 legs and silver eyes. They had basic tool use, fire, simple language. The Council estimated they were maybe 2,000 years from spaceflight. Chen was supposed to watch them develop naturally. But here's what nobody tells you about that rule. When you spend 3 years watching a species struggle, watching them fail, watching them die from things you could fix in seconds, that rule starts to feel wrong. Here's the first thing that'll blow your mind. The creature Chen touched wasn't even supposed to exist according to galactic biology. The second revelation: the Krill weren't just learning from that touch, they were absorbing knowledge directly from Chen's DNA. And the third truth: the civilization they built in just 50 years would force every major power in the galaxy to rewrite their constitution. The Galactic Council tried to bury this story. They classified every report. They threatened Chen with prison. They even tried to reverse what happened. But you can't unring a bell. And you definitely can't stop an idea whose time has come. Let me show you exactly how this happened. Dr. James Chen wasn't supposed to be on Kepler 442b at all. He was a replacement. The original scientist, Dr. Sarah Martinez, got sick 2 weeks before launch. Chen was younger, less experienced, but he had something Martinez didn't have. He had grown up on a colony world. He understood what it meant to build something from nothing. The Galactic Council ran the universe like a nature preserve. They had 40,000 member species. Each one had earned their seat by developing space travel independently. No help, no shortcuts. The Council believed this process created strong ethical civilizations. Interference created dependency. Or worse, it created weapons. Survey stations orbited primitive worlds like invisible moons. Scientists watched, they recorded, they learned, but they never ever made contact. The technology keeping them hidden was beyond anything humans had invented. The Krill below couldn't see the station even if they looked right at it. They couldn't detect its signals. As far as they knew, they were alone in the universe. Chen arrived in 2247. Earth had been in the Galactic Council for only 30 years. Humans were still the new kids, the rookies. Other species watched them carefully, waiting for them to mess up. Here's the first surprise. Chen loved the assignment. Most scientists found survey duty boring. 3 years of watching the same planet spin, the same creatures hunt and gather, the same slow march of progress. But Chen saw something others missed. He saw patterns. The Krill weren't just surviving, they were experimenting. They tried new tools, new social structures. They failed constantly, but they learned from each failure. Chen filled 40 notebooks with observations. He mapped their language. He identified 3 distinct cultures. He even gave them names, though that was against regulations. The northern Krill were builders. They constructed elaborate shelters from stone and wood. The southern Krill were wanderers. They followed the seasons and the great herds. The eastern Krill were innovators. They made the best tools, the sharpest weapons. Here's the second surprise. Chen talked to them, not directly, but he narrated their lives like a documentary. "There goes little Silvereye," he'd say. watching a young krill hunt. He's trying a new spear design. Bold move. The isolation was getting to him. Talking helped. The third surprise came in year 2. The krill started dying. A disease swept through the northern settlements. Chen watched helplessly as entire villages emptied. The krill had no immunity, no medicine. They died by the hundreds. Chen's reports to the council were desperate. Request permission to intervene. All. Death toll exceeding projections. Species viability threatened. The council's response was 2 words. Observation only. Now here's where things get really interesting. The creature that changed everything was a juvenile krill, named Chen. Named him Lucky, because he was lucky. Chen found him. It was day 847 of the mission. Chen was running his normal survey sweep. Thermal imaging, population counts, resource mapping. That's when his scanners picked up a heat signature in the mountains. One krill, alone, far from any settlement. The thermal reading was dropping fast. Chen knew the regulations. He'd memorized them, recited them, but he also knew what a dropping thermal signature meant. Hypothermia. The mountain nights on Kepler 442 bed dropped to -40 degrees. The krill had fur, but this one was small, young. It wouldn't survive until morning. Here's what made Chen's decision remarkable. He didn't act impulsively. He spent 4 hours in his quarters debating. He reviewed the regulations. He composed 3 different reports to the council. He even recorded a message explaining his decision. Then he deleted it. Because he knew what he was about to do was wrong by council law. But it felt right by every other measure. The station had a single transport pod for emergencies. Chen had never used it. He programmed it for a landing site 2 kilometers from the creature. The pod was stealthy, silent. The krill would never know it was there. Chen wore a full environmental suit, completely enclosed, no skin contact, no DNA transfer. He was still following some rules. He found Lucky in a shallow cave. The young krill had been hunting when a rockslide cut him off from his pack. His left rear leg was crushed. Infection had set in. The creature's silver eyes tracked Chen's approach. Those eyes held something Chen recognized. Intelligence, awareness, fear. Here's the thing about krill biology that the council hadn't fully understood. Their fur wasn't just fur. It was semi-permeable, designed to absorb moisture from the air, environmental nutrients. In their evolution, this adaptation helped them survive harsh seasons, but it had another property. It could absorb complex molecules, including DNA. Chen knelt beside Lucky. The creature whimpered, a sound that translated across species. Pain. Chen knew he shouldn't touch it. The regulations were clear, but the environmental suit had a medical kit in the forearm compartment. Antibiotics, painkillers, a molecular brace for the broken leg. All he needed to do was administer them. The suit's glove had a small tear. Chen noticed it too late. Maybe he'd snagged it on a rock during the hike. Maybe it was defective. It didn't matter. When Chen injected the antibiotic, his bare finger brushed Lucky's fur for less than 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Here's what nobody could have predicted. Human DNA is incredibly complex. 3 billion base pairs, coding for everything from eye color to language processing. When Lucky's fur absorbed those cells, something unprecedented happened. The krill's biology didn't just reject the foreign DNA, it integrated it. Lucky's eyes brightened, his breathing steadied. The broken leg began healing at an accelerated rate. Chen watched in amazement, as the molecular brace wasn't just holding the bone, it was being incorporated into the creature's structure, enhanced, improved. Chen carried Lucky back to the cave entrance. The young krill watched him leave, those silver eyes tracking every movement, recording, learning. Chen returned to the station in a cold sweat. He'd broken the rule. But Lucky was alive. That had to count for something. But if you think that's crazy, wait until you hear this. Chen didn't report the incident. Not immediately. He told himself he'd wait to see if there were consequences. If Lucky survived. If the council's sensors detected the transport pod launch. Days passed. then weeks. Nothing happened. Chen began to think he'd gotten away with it. He was wrong. 3 months after the incident, Chen's monitoring systems picked up something impossible. The northern Krill settlements were changing, not slowly, rapidly. Buildings that should have taken months to construct were appearing in days. Tools were becoming more sophisticated, complex. Chen zoomed in his cameras, enhanced the images. His hands started shaking. The Krill were using metal. They'd skipped straight from Stone Age to Bronze Age in 12 weeks. Here's what made this terrifying. Cultural evolution doesn't work like that. It takes generations, centuries. The jump from stone to metal requires dozens of incremental discoveries: mining, smelting, alloy composition, temperature control. Each step builds on the previous one. The Krill had leapfrogged the entire process. Chen traced the innovation back to its source, a single settlement, Lucky's settlement. The young Krill had returned to his pack changed, enhanced, but more than that, he'd returned with knowledge. Remember how Krill fur absorbs molecules? Lucky didn't just get Chen's DNA, he got Chen's neural patterns, memory proteins, the biochemical structure of human learning, not specific memories, but the framework. The method. Humans learn differently than Krill, faster, more abstractly. We can imagine solutions before testing them. We can teach complex ideas through language alone. Lucky brought that ability back to his people. Here's where it gets really interesting. Krill are highly social. They groom each other, share food mouth to mouth, sleep in communal dens. When Lucky returned, his pack did what they always do. They welcomed him. They groomed him. And in doing so they absorbed trace amounts of the altered DNA. The change spread like a virus. But it wasn't a virus, it was evolution on fast forward. Each Krill that absorbed the enhanced DNA gained increased cognitive ability, better pattern recognition, longer memory, abstract thinking, and they passed it to others through normal social contact. Within 6 months the entire northern population carried the enhancement. Chen watched in horror and amazement. As they transformed their civilization, they developed writing, mathematics, engineering principles that took humans thousands of years to discover. They did it in seasons. Here's the contrast that made Chen realize the scale of what he'd done. The southern and eastern Krill continued developing normally. Stone tools, basic shelters, tribal organization. But the northern Krill, they built workshops, forges, irrigation systems. They formed a council system of government. They created art, philosophy, science. Chen's reports to the Galactic Council became increasingly desperate. Unexplained acceleration in subject population development. Request immediate review of monitoring protocols. Possible equipment malfunction causing data anomalies. The council sent an inspection team. 3 senior xenobiologists arrived on a fast cruiser. They reviewed Chen's data. They ran their own scans. Their conclusion was immediate and unanimous. Contamination. Someone had broken protocol, made contact. Chen was brought before an emergency tribunal. The council chamber was massive. Representatives from 40 species sat in judgment. Humans were barely tolerated in the council. This kind of violation could get Earth expelled, or worse. The lead prosecutor was a Verath, a species that looked like walking crystals. Its voice chimed like breaking glass. Dr. Chen, did you make physical contact with the subject species? Chen had prepared for this moment. He had his speech ready, his justifications, his explanations about the dying creature and the broken glove and the unintended consequences. But when he opened his mouth, only one word came out. Yes. The chamber erupted. 40 species all shouting in their native languages. The translator system couldn't keep up. The Verath prosecutor's crystal body flashed red with anger. You have doomed an entire species to dependency, to corruption. You have violated our most sacred law. Chen stood alone in the center of that chamber, 40 civilizations condemning him, and all he could think about was Lucky's silver eyes, the intelligence behind them, the life he'd saved. This brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. The council was wrong about dependency. They were wrong about corruption. Because what happened next proved they didn't understand evolution at all. The northern Krill didn't become dependent on outside help. They became independent, aggressively so. Within 2 years of Lucky's enhancement, they had developed electricity, steam power, basic chemistry. They built cities, real cities with populations in the thousands. They created a written constitution, schools, research institutions. But here's the revelation that changed everything. They figured out they'd been watched. It happened when a Krill engineer named Quickpaw was developing a telescope. Nothing fancy, just glass lenses and metal tubes. But when he pointed it at the night sky, he saw something that shouldn't be there. A distortion, a shimmer. The survey station's cloaking field was perfect against Krill eyes. But it wasn't designed for Krill eyes enhanced with human-derived cognitive patterns. Quickpaw reported his discovery to the Krill Council. They built more telescopes, better ones. They mapped the anomaly, calculated its orbit, its size, and they reached a conclusion that would have taken unenhanced Krill another 1,000 years to reach. They were not alone in the universe. Here's what made the Galactic Council panic. The Krill didn't respond with fear. They responded with curiosity. They wanted to make contact. They started broadcasting radio signals, mathematical sequences, chemical formulas, universal languages of science. They were calling out to whoever was watching them. Chen begged the council to respond. They know we're here. Ignoring them now is worse than the original contact. They're ready. Look at what they've built. They deserve a chance. The council refused. They are contaminated data. Their development is artificial, illegitimate. They do not qualify for council membership. But plot twist. The Krill didn't need permission. Year 5 after the incident, the northern Krill launched a rocket, primitive by galactic standards, chemical propulsion, barely made it out of atmosphere. But it reached orbit, and the pilot, Lucky himself, now a celebrated hero, broadcast a message that every species in the galaxy heard. We are the Krill of Kepler 442b. We know you are watching. We do not know why you hide. But we are ready to meet you. We have built this with our own hands, our own minds. We ask only for the chance to learn, to grow, to join you among the stars. The message was eloquent, humble, and absolutely against every projection the council had made about contaminated species. Contaminated species were supposed to be dependent, weak, unable to innovate independently. The Krill were none of those things. Here's the system-level implication that nobody saw coming. The council's entire philosophy was based on natural development. The idea that only species who reached the stars alone were strong enough to join. But what if that wasn't the only path? What if intervention, careful, limited intervention, could accelerate development without creating weakness? 40 species debated this question for months. Some wanted to destroy the Krill, remove the contamination, start over. Others saw potential, a new model, a new way. Humans argued most passionately for acceptance, because accepting the Krill meant accepting that human judgment, human compassion could be valuable, that the rules weren't perfect. The vote was close, 23 to 17. The Krill were granted provisional membership. They would be monitored, tested, but they would be allowed to develop, to prove themselves. Lucky met Chen in person 1 year later. The Krill had developed their own space travel, their own station. When Lucky extended his 6-legged stance in greeting, Chen saw something in those silver eyes. Not just intelligence, gratitude, understanding. You saved my life, Lucky said through a translator. But more than that, you gave my people a chance. We know the cost you paid. Chen had been expelled from the council's science division, banned from survey duty, but Earth had welcomed him home as a hero. The man who proved humans could make tough calls, could change the game. I just couldn't watch you die, Chen said. Lucky's whiskers twitched in what Chen had learned was a Krill smile. Neither could we. So what does all this mean for us today? The Krill incident fundamentally changed galactic politics. For thousands of years, the Council operated on one principle: non-interference. That principle was designed to protect primitive species. But it also protected the status quo, the established powers. Because every new member had to develop alone, it took them thousands of years to catch up. By then the old powers had advanced even further. The gap never closed. The Krill proved a different model could work. Within 10 years of joining the council, they had become a major trading power, not because they copied existing technology, because they innovated. Their unique cognitive enhancement gave them different perspectives. They saw solutions others missed. They approached problems from angles that pure Krill or pure human thinking couldn't reach. Here's why this matters for us. Humanity gained something huge from this incident. Credibility. Before the Krill, other species saw humans as reckless, emotional, dangerous. We were the species that fought wars over ideas, that destroyed our own planet before learning to protect it, that nearly went extinct from our own weapons. Nobody trusted us with real power. But Chen's decision showed something different. Yes, he broke the rules, but he broke them for the right reasons. He saved a life, and in saving that life, he proved that human instincts, our empathy, our inability to watch suffering when we can prevent it, could lead to positive outcomes. That changed how others saw us. Within 20 years 5 more species received Krill-style interventions, carefully controlled, always reversible. Medical assistance here. Agricultural technology there. Nothing that created dependency. Everything that gave them a fighting chance. The universe didn't collapse. Primitive species didn't become slaves or weapons. They became partners. Here's the short-term consequence. The council split. Some species couldn't accept the new model. They formed their own coalition. The purists. They believed natural development was sacred. Intervention was corruption. This division created tension, border disputes, trade restrictions. Nothing violent yet, but everyone could feel the pressure building. The long-term consequence is still developing. Because if intervention works, if it creates stronger civilizations faster, then everything changes. The balance of power shifts. Old hierarchies crumble. Species that were projected to take 10,000 years to reach space could do it in 1,000. In 500, the galaxy could fill up with new voices, new perspectives, new competition. Here's your personal takeaway. This story is about a rule that seemed absolute, unbreakable, necessary, until someone broke it and proved the rule was wrong. How many rules in your life are like that? How many things do you avoid because that's how it's always been done? Chen didn't set out to change the galaxy. He just couldn't watch a creature die when he had the power to help. That decision cost him his career, his reputation, his position, but it also saved a species, created a new model, changed history. Sometimes the right choice isn't the legal choice, or the safe choice. It's the human choice. Here's another lesson the Krill taught us. Hybrid thinking is powerful. The Krill didn't become human. They became something new. Krill cognition plus human learning patterns created innovations neither species achieved alone. In your life, in your work, in your community. What happens when you combine different perspectives, different approaches, different ways of thinking? The business world calls this cross-pollination. The Krill call it touch knowledge. The idea that meaningful contact changes both parties, makes both stronger. Chen touched Lucky. But Lucky's species also touched humanity. They reminded us why we explore, why we reach out, why we take risks. Here's the tension that keeps building. The purists see the Krill as an aberration, a mistake. They're gathering support, building alliances. They want to return to the old ways. Meanwhile, the interventionists, that's what they call Chen's supporters, are identifying more species that need help. More worlds where a single touch could save thousands of lives. Everyone knows a confrontation is coming. The council can't stay divided forever. Something has to give. Before we wrap up, there's one final thing you need to know. Here's what the Galactic Council never told anyone. Chen wasn't the first human to break the non-interference rule. He was the third. The first incident happened in 2231. Dr. Rebecca Stone, on Survey Station Theta 9, she gave medical supplies to a dying village. The species was called the Malor. They were insectoid, brilliant mathematicians. Stone's intervention saved 40 lives. The council covered it up. They transferred Stone to a desk job on Earth. They buried the reports. And they watched the Malore carefully for the next 15 years. The Malore developed faster than projections, not dramatically, just consistently. They reached spaceflight 800 years ahead of schedule. When they applied for council membership, nobody mentioned Stone. Nobody connected the dots. The Malore joined as a natural development. Case closed. The second incident was 2239. Thomas Wright on Kepler 186 f. He stopped a forest fire that would have destroyed the subject species' primary food source. The species was called the Ven. They were aquatic, creative, artistic. Wright's intervention saved thousands from starvation. Again the council covered it up. Again they monitored closely. The Ven developed space travel 600 years early. They joined the council last year. Nobody mentioned Wright. The pattern held. Here's the final twist that reframes everything. The council knew intervention could work. They'd seen it twice. But they couldn't admit it, because admitting it meant admitting their foundational philosophy was wrong. That thousands of years of non-interference had let countless species die when they could have been saved. That the moral high ground they claimed was built on mountains of preventable deaths. Chen was different because he refused to stay quiet.
He documented everything.
He fought the tribunal.
He made it public.
The other scientists had accepted their punishment, stayed silent, disappeared into obscurity.
Chen forced the galaxy to confront the question they'd been avoiding.
When Lucky testified at Chen's appeal hearing, he brought evidence. Records of Krill development. Proof they'd maintained their culture, their identity, their independence. We are not human, Lucky said. We will never be human, but we are also not what we would have been. We are something new, and we like what we've become. The appeal was denied, but the damage was done.
The truth was out.
Other species started investigating their own histories. They found similar incidents. Covered up, buried,
Hidden.
The council's moral authority crumbled. Here's what makes this story remarkable. Chen didn't set out to be a revolutionary.
He just wanted to save one creature on one cold night.
But that single act of compassion cascaded into system-wide change. Because compassion isn't weakness.
It's the thing that makes change possible.
The thing that questions rules and challenges hierarchies and asks, but what if there's a better way? The Krill are thriving. Their civilization now spans 3 planets. They've developed technology even the council finds impressive. They're happy,
healthy, free.
Everything the council feared, dependency, corruption, weakness, never materialized. The purists still argue it was luck, that the next intervention might create disaster, but they're running out of examples.
Chen lives on Earth now.
He teaches at the Xenobiology Institute. His students are the ones who'll carry this forward, the ones who'll decide when rules serve us and when we serve rules. Lucky visits every few years.
They've become friends, different species, different worlds, connected by one moment of forbidden contact.
If this opened your eyes, you need to hear about the other times humans broke the rules and changed everything. Let's recap what we've uncovered. A human scientist touched an alien creature for 2 seconds and accidentally created a new civilization that forced the entire galaxy to rewrite its laws. The DNA transfer gave the Krill enhanced cognition without making them dependent or weak. And the Galactic Council had been covering up successful interventions for decades because admitting they worked meant admitting their core philosophy was wrong. But here's the thing. This story isn't really about aliens or space or breaking rules. It's about the moment when compassion collides with protocol, when what's right challenges what's legal, when one person decides that some rules exist to be broken.
Chen paid a price, his career, his position.
But he'd make the same choice again.
Because some costs are worth paying.
Some consequences are worth facing. When you know you saved a life, changed a civilization, proved that compassion can create strength instead of weakness, that's worth more than any career. The Krill civilization is the proof. They didn't become human copies. They became better versions of themselves. They took what they gained and built something unique, something powerful. They proved that help doesn't equal weakness, that acceleration doesn't equal corruption, that maybe, just maybe, the universe doesn't have to be so harsh. Now, if this story fascinated you, you need to smash that subscribe button.
Because we're just getting started with humanity's impact on galactic civilization. The Chen incident was one moment, one decision.
But humans have been shaking up the galaxy for 30 years.
Some stories are celebrated.
Others are still classified, and we're going to uncover them all.
Hit that like button if you think Chen made the right call. If you believe compassion should sometimes trump protocol.
If you think humanity's emotional nature is a feature, not a bug. Your likes tell YouTube to share this with others who need to hear it.
Here's my deeper ask.
Share this video with someone who's facing a tough decision, someone who's weighing rules against what feels right, someone who needs to hear that breaking protocol for the right reasons can change the world. The Krill story needs to spread, not just because it's fascinating,
because it's instructive. It teaches us that our instincts matter.
That sometimes the human thing to do is exactly the right thing to do. We've got a whole playlist covering humanity's greatest galactic moments. The time we accidentally started an interstellar war by misunderstanding a greeting ritual. The human colony that befriended a species everyone thought was impossible to communicate with. The trader who broke an economic blockade with nothing but stubbornness and coffee.
Each story shows the same pattern. Humans don't follow the rules. We question them. We challenge them. We break them when they need breaking. Next video drops in 3 days.
We're covering the Proxima incident.
Covering the Proxima incident.
The time a human engineer fixed a supposedly unfixable problem and made the galaxy's most advanced species look like amateurs. That story is even more controversial than Chen's.
Because it didn't just challenge one rule. It challenged the idea that older civilizations are always more advanced. Here's my question for the comments. Would you have done what Chen did?
If you knew it would cost your career but save a life and change history, would you make that choice, or would you follow protocol?
No wrong answers, just honest ones.
The best comment gets pinned and shouted out next video. Remember, in a galaxy full of rules, sometimes it takes a human to remember why those rules exist, and sometimes it takes a human to prove the rules are wrong. Stay curious, stay compassionate, and never let protocol blind you to what's right.
See you in the stars.